Let's take a moment and we'll check out the System Settings menu on Pioneer's NEX head units. Even though your particular receiver may have buttons on the side or across the bottom like this one, the on-screen operation in this demonstration is identical for the following Pioneer NEX models: AVH 4100 NEX, 4200 NEX, and 4201 NEX, AVIC 5100 NEX, 5200 NEX, and 5201 NEX, AVIC 6100 NEX, 6200 NEX, 6201 NEX, AVIC 7100 NEX, 7200 NEX, 7201 NEX, AVIC 8100 NEX, 8200 NEX, and AVIC 8201 NEX. To start off here, we are going to start with the head unit, the source on the head unit switched off, but the head unit, up and powered up, and we're going to touch the gears. And let's go to the toolbox up here, which is our system settings. The first thing we see on the list here is the AV source settings. And in the AV source settings, there are individual videos made for just about all of the topics here. There's an individual video made for mix tracks, for the HD radio, for Sirius XM, and for Bluetooth audio. A couple of things I would like to point out here. For tag forwarding, that means if I have an iPhone or an iPod attached to the system and I tag a song from radio or from Sirius XM and to be reminded to buy that song later, the tag here is being forwarded to USB number 1 in this case. That can also be switched to USB number 2 if you have an iPod or an iPhone attached. The next thing up is Bluetooth audio here, and right now Bluetooth audio is switched on. So what that means is, in my drop-down menu, I have Bluetooth audio available as a source. Now if I go back in here and to AV source settings, if I switch Bluetooth audio off, now that will no longer show up in my source list. So you can see that Bluetooth audio here is gone from my source list. But I like to use Bluetooth audio, so let's make sure to switch that on. Here's Bluetooth audio, and it is switched on. All right, we'll go back up. Next up is Everscroll. Right now Everscroll is switched off. We can also choose to switch it on. An example of Everscroll is when you're listening to HD radio or Sirius XM or music playing back from a USB or SD card source. If the name of the song and artist has long text, the text will scroll across the screen and will continue to do so. If you don't want to see that scrolling, you can just switch Everscroll off. Next up is the input and output settings. This is a very important setting for operating with a cell phone with a system, and that is the smartphone setup right here. For more information about the smartphone setup, be sure to check out the thing that you want to do. If it's playing Pandora, if it's using Android Auto, if it's using Apple CarPlay, or other parts of the system, they are explained in detail how to set up your system right here. So we'll go back up. Next up is the AV input, and under the camera settings you can get a more clear explanation about the AV input being used as a camera. In this case, we can use the AV input on the back of the head unit as a source. That's an audio video input source. If we want to use that AV input as a camera number 2 in the system, we can set it up as a camera, and you can choose to switch it off as well. If you switch it off, no AV input or camera can be used. For right now, we'll set this up as camera. And then we have auxiliary input here, and from the source menu we can have auxiliary input show up in the source menu, just like we showed you with Bluetooth audio. Here's auxiliary input as one of the sources. If you don't want to see that source in the list, you can choose to switch auxiliary input off. Last on the list here is app radio mode video adjustment. If you are operating your head unit in app radio mode from an iPhone or an Android phone, you can do video adjustment right here with the parking brake engaged. So let's go back up. Next up is our camera settings. And for more information about the camera settings, be sure to check out the camera videos. There are multiple camera videos that explain the camera settings in great detail. We'll go back up. Next up is our demo mode that you can switch on or off right here. Most people like to have the demonstration mode switched off. When the head unit is powered down, the demonstration mode will show up. If you switch the demo mode off, it goes away. So let's scroll down a little here. Next up is our system language. Now when you first power up this head unit, you have to choose a system language. You can go in and change that system language to a number of different options right here. Just be sure that you can read and write that language before you choose an option. For right now, I'm going to choose English. Next up is Restore Settings. We'll touch that. And you can see that all of the options under Restore Settings are grayed out here. So in order to get to them, we need to engage the parking brake. Once we've engaged the parking brake, we can choose to restore the audio settings, the color palette theme settings, the Bluetooth settings, or all of the settings in the head unit. You can do that by touching the Restore button here. We're going to skip that for right now and head back up. Next up is our keyboard type, and right now that is set to English. If you are using the head unit in app radio mode, a keyboard is an important part of the system. You can choose different languages for that keyboard. Next up is the beep tone that we can switch on or off. Now if you listen to the system, when I touch a button, there's a beep when I touch buttons on the head unit. If you want to switch that beep off, we can do that very easily by switching off the beep tone right here. Now when I touch a button, I like to have the beep tone turned on. So I'm going to switch that beep tone on as a confirmation that I have touched the screen. All right, let's scroll down a little here, and next up is touch panel calibration, but you can see that that is grayed out. So let's engage the parking brake so we can see the touch panel calibration. All right, we've engaged the parking brake, and now touch panel calibration becomes available. Let's open that screen. The screen calibration is adjusted at the factory before the product is shipped. If you feel that you need to adjust the screen, the calibration of the screen, you can start to do that right here. If you typically operate this head unit from the driver's seat, I strongly recommend that you do your touch panel calibration also from the driver's seat. If you've opened up this window and you don't want to go through the entire calibration process, just press and hold the home button for a couple of seconds to get you back out. Let's go back up to the gears, the toolbox, and we'll scroll down. Next up are the dimmer settings. And there is a full video on operating the dimmer and the dimmer timer. So be sure to check out the dimmer settings video. We'll go back up. Next up is the driver position, and this can be switched from the right side of the vehicle to the left side of the vehicle. Most users in North America will want to keep the driving position on the left side. Next up is the Android Auto launch feature. And for selected head units that support Android Auto, you can choose that when you plug in your Android phone, Android Auto automatically launches and comes up on the screen. If you don't want that to happen, you can choose to switch it off right here and only launch Android Auto when you're ready to use it. For right now, I will keep Android Auto launch switched on. Next up is our picture adjustment, and you can see that picture adjustment is grayed out here. So let's engage the parking brake. When we engage the parking brake, picture adjustment becomes available. And for more information about the picture adjustment, a full video for this, take a look at the picture adjustment video. We'll go back up. Next up is our system information. And for system information, we can see firmware information here, in case there's an update that needs to happen, and connection status. And depending on your particular head unit, this connection status screen may look significantly different. We'll go back up here, and you can see that the firmware update is not available. If we engage the parking brake, the firmware update option becomes available. We'll open that. Here this tells you to download a firmware update when it's available from pioneerelectronics.com and place that onto a USB drive or an SD card and follow the instructions to continue the update. We'll go back up. And finally at the bottom here are OEM settings. And the OEM settings are used if you have the iDataLink Maestro OEM integration unit installed with the system. For more information about that, check out the iDataLink Maestro video. When you're done making adjustments here, you can just hit the X to escape. Let's take a moment and we'll check out the System Settings menu on Pioneer's NEX head units. Even though your particular receiver may have buttons on the side or across the bottom like this one, the on-screen operation in this demonstration is identical for the following Pioneer NEX models: AVH 4100 NEX, 4200 NEX, and 4201 NEX. AVIC 5100 NEX, 5200 NEX, and 5201 NEX. AVIC 6100 NEX, 6200 NEX, 6201 NEX. AVIC 7100 NEX, 7200 NEX, 7201 NEX. AVIC 8100 NEX, 8200 NEX, and AVIC 8201 NEX. To start off here,